Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. That picture of the snowy road was what my road looked like last Sunday. This morning, it looks like mud, muck, and ruts. I didn't take that picture for you. This Sunday welcome to Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church, and our service today is called All-Embracing, All-Encompassing Love Through the Life of MLK Jr. It is nice to be here with you, and I am going to tell you that we had a Reverend Suzanne sighting this morning as she dropped off her keys for me. So if anybody saw her, she really wasn't here. I'm Reverend Susan. My pronouns are she, her, he, she, her, and hers. Whoa, and I'm happy to be with you. We are a church of open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. All who share our values are welcome here with us. The new year has arrived. We are already halfway into the first month of that new year. Wow. And Reverend Suzanne's sabbatical, our first snowstorm worship service last week, ably led, at the last minute, pulled together. And I want to thank Tom, and I want to thank Bill, Jenny W., and a very thoughtful message provided by Rabbi Jessica. And it gave me a lot to think about. I was happy to hear that. Today is my first time in person with you as your sabbatical minister. I'm so delighted to be here, and there are ways to be in touch with me, and please don't hesitate to reach out. Just a couple of reminders for you. Reverend Suzanne is inviting anyone who's interested to go along on a tour with her this coming spring. Reggie Harris's group called the Living Legacy Project, and that's the giving partner in November, is leading a trip to visit Selma, Montgomery, and Birmingham. And then she's going. You are welcome to attend with her as well. And there's information in the January newsletter with all the worship events. With that in mind, next week is Fun Church. And that is a time of an opportunity to engage with one another around a led question, to be able to get to know one another in a deeper fashion than can happen by sitting here like this. But I really look forward to the Fun Church event that you're having, and planning is happening for it. We do not know whether there will be able to be food. There will not be able to be food or coffee this week, but we can gather afterwards with our mask on to visit and talk a little bit. So don't miss the invitation, opportunity to get together next week and visit. I want to thank today's helpers. We have usher was Mary Ellen Fitzgibbon. Our greeter was Garen Boyd. And I want to thank the coffee hosts Florence and Vincent, who were at the ready and standing by to make coffee and have it available when they found out that it wasn't going to be possible. I love that about this church. You know, in Leominster, I never knew who was going to make coffee. Sometimes it would appear magically, sometimes it wouldn't. And I love that you have that process in place. What a wonderful way to be welcoming and to take care of one another. So I really want to call that to your attention and applaud you for that. And now it's time for you to welcome one another. So welcome one another into this beloved community. First, turn and say hi to the person in front of you, behind you, beside you, around you. And then let's wave to our friends on Zoom. Hi, everybody. Wow, there's quite a crowd there. Oh, wow. Well, we welcome you here. We're glad to have you with us. And I believe now we will have a call to worship. And these are in the words of a colleague of mine, Angela Herrera. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. Bring it here with you. It is important. It has high standards that the world needs. Bring those high standards with you too. Bring them and your joy and your passion. Bring your loving and your courage and your conviction. Bring your need for healing and your power to heal others. There is much work to do, and all have it here. All of you are here to bring all that you are here, right now, into this very room. Welcome. And now we light the symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice, and Wendy is here to do that. Wendy?
I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join me in the words of our covenant, which you can see on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God.
Thank you for playing Come Sunday. That was one of MLK's most favorite hymns that he relied on to help him get through the tough times. And now if you would join together and our opening hymn, 348, Guide My Feet. The lyrics will appear on the screen or in your gray hymnal.
Our story today is That Is My Dream, with words by Langston Hughes and illustrated by Daniel Miares. So this book uses a poem called Dream Variation by Langston Hughes as the text. Langston Hughes is a beloved and celebrated American poet. His first book of poems, The Weary Blues, which this poem is from, was published in 1926, when Hughes was only 24 years old. The illustrator shared a note that studying Langston Hughes' poetry in high school had a profound impact on him. In the poem, as he interprets it, Hughes powerfully contrasts a day smothered by inequality with one of bright hope. To fling my arms wide in some place of the sun, to whirl and to dance till the white day is done, then rest at cool evening beneath a tall tree while night comes on gently, dark like me. That is my dream. To fling my arms wide in the face of the sun, dance, whirl, whirl, till the quick day is done. Rest at pale evening, a tall, slim tree. Night coming tenderly. Black like me. Thank you all for your listening, and children may now leave for RE.
Every Sunday, in the center of our service, we create together a time of quiet, a moment of prayer and meditation, a chance to reconnect with our inner selves, our highest ideals, our sense of the holy, however it is we conceive it. So let's begin this time by, if you are comfortable, closing your eyes and breathing deeply. Breathe in and out. Center yourself and feel your feet on the floor. Breathe in and breathe out. And relax. Relax as you can, sinking into your seat. Breathing in and out. During this meditation time, we'll first join together in our centering song, and then we'll sit for a few minutes of shared quiet. And then we will speak to one another of our joys and sorrows. And then I will lead a prayer. Our centering for today and for the month of January is find a stillness, hold a stillness. The lyrics are on the screen. And remain seated and join in as you like, or just center into the music. Let that song guide you gently into our time of shared meditation. and gently bring yourself back, present to the room and out of your time of silence. It is our tradition to have a time of worship, to share with one another the milestones of our lives, those personal joys and those sorrows. And we speak and we listen with care so that our sharing knits us together in love and in strength and in community. First, if folks on Zoom have a sorrow to share today, please type it into the chat box now, and I will read them aloud. And if folks here in the room have a sorrow to speak, you may come forward as well. And thank you for sharing these joys and any other joys that you have. Please make sure that you express your sorrow and your joy to one another, because that is what builds a community. And you never have to leave here holding a sorrow to yourself. Find someone, someone next to you, and share those sorrows, share those joys, and build this beloved community together. And we have lit our final candle to shine out the thanks for all the many blessings in our lives. And if you would join me in a spirit of prayer. Holy One of blessing, this week we watched as the weather wreaked havoc on friends of ours, north and south of here, whose roads were flooded, roads whom many of us know that we've driven over and on, going to York or Hampton or Salisbury or all the places in Maine that were affected. The currents of flowing water running down the road is not something that we expect. And we're puzzled at all that happens around us weather-wise. And we know that this earth, Mother Earth, is crying out to us. The time of us not taking care of you, Mother Earth, is over. We must. So I ask you to hold all those that you know and Mother Earth in your hearts today. And I would also ask that we be attentive to the needs of the world. Those needs are so many, and we feel like we can't do anything, but we can. We can build alliances, we can build friendships, we can stay informed. We can give where we can, both of time and talents, of energy. We can volunteer. We can take a moment to think of all those who are suffering. It is up to us, as beloved beings, as part of this universe, to do all that we can to help in any way that we can. So I pray for strength, and I pray for courage, I pray for wisdom, and I pray that you will know that you have power and love to do good. May it be so. Amen. Blessed be.
Now is the time for our offertory. Our church is a self-supporting organization funded by your generous annual pledge. You may also contribute to our weekly collection plate, which we split every month with a deserving cause. Folks on Zoom can donate either way using the orange button at the top right corner of our homepage at melroseuu.org. For the month of January, this church will be giving half of our collection plate to the Last Prisoner Project. The Last Prisoner Project was founded in 2019 out of the belief that no one should remain incarcerated for offenses that are now legal, and works to end the fundamental injustice that is America's policy of cannabis prohibition and the war on drugs. Our anthem today is Like a Mighty Stream by Moses Hogan.
Thank you, choir. This reading is from the book called Where Do We Go From Here? From Chaos to Community. This is degenderized. The book is by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and its words are as relevant today in 2024 as they were in 1967 when the book was first published. Every nation must become ecumenical rather than sectarian. Every nation must now develop an overriding loyalty to humanity as a whole to preserve the best of their individual societies. This calls for a worldwide fellowship that lifts neighborly concern beyond one's tribe, race, class, nation, and is in reality a call for an all-embracing, all-conditional love for all. This often misunderstood and misinterpreted concept has now become an absolute necessity for our survival. Unconditional love. When I speak of love, I am speaking of that force which all the great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life. Love is the key that unlocks the door, which leads to ultimate reality. let us love one another. Let us hope that the Spirit will become the order of the day. We can no longer afford to worship the God of hate or bow before the altar of retaliation. The oceans of history are made turbulent by the ever-rising tides of hate. History is cluttered with the wreckage of nations and individuals who pursued this self-defeating path of hate. So this morning I want to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. as a spiritual warrior. When King became the leader of the bus boycott and the growing civil rights movement, he reluctantly accepted that role. And I believe that as a minister with strong religious beliefs and a sense of frustration with the continuing acts of prejudice and racism against African Americans, coupled with his hope-filled attitude that the country was ready for a change, he overcame that reluctance and went on to become a spiritual warrior. Now, warriors create themselves through trial and error, and pain and suffering, and through their ability to own their own faults and to work for the spiritual advancement of others. The March on Selma and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was phase one toward building the beloved kingdom that he dreamed of, that he spoke of and he worked for. He helped to usher in what we would call phase one of the civil rights movement. The Civil Rights Act, said President Lyndon Johnson, was a triumph of freedom as huge as any victory that has ever been won on any battlefield. Today, we strike away the last major shackle of fierce and ancient bonds. And it is true that after the Civil Rights Acts, differences did happen. African Americans could register to vote. They could go out to eat or ride the bus and not be forced to sit in the colored-only section. They could go to the library and to parks. Indeed, progress was made. Phase one was a success if the goal was to treat African Americans and other people of color with a degree of decency. But phase one was not successful if the goal was full equality for all people. As King wrote in Where Do We Go From Here? The absence of brutality and unregenerate evil is not the presence of justice. And even more importantly, he reminded us that there is a problem when we act as if the recording of law is treated as a reality of reform. And it's true that after the civil rights movement of the 60s, it was possible to share counter space, a restaurant, a table, and parks, motels, libraries. It was true. Yet, as King pointed out, it was at no cost. If you didn't want to share space, it was pretty easy not to have to share space. There was no cost, socially, spiritually, monetarily. But to establish the connections, and that is where the rubber hits the road. That is what we are working on now. Reaching out across barriers that are wide and deeply entrenched is hard work. To see and acknowledge differences and not be afraid, and to be willing as a member of the dominant culture to hear and learn from those who have been part of the non-dominant culture without trying to convince them that it isn't what you meant, or without trying to change another by ignoring personal experiences. That's where the rubber hits the road, and that's the harder work. History teaches us that barriers between the races first occurred in the United States when those who you would now call the haves began to enact laws that would pit the have-nots, the slaves and the indentured, against one another, the poor whites against the slaves. Systemic laws, which came about to favor whites, and even the poorest of whites over black people, created a wedge, drove a wedge between both groups, who were beholden to the rich landowners. As early as the 1670 and leading into the 1700s, laws were passed that accomplished that deep, deep economic racial split. Some laws even gave whites the right to slap and punish black people if they thought they were becoming a little too uppity. Laws were passed which allowed indentured poor white men, the right to earn their freedom. And then when that indenture was over, they gave them corn, a gun, money, and 50 acres of land. The implied promise of the possibility of becoming like the rich white men continued the divide and created fierce competitions and fear as both groups battled over meager scraps. The racially and economically motivated system that this was is one of those unexplored, oftentimes unconscious barriers that needs to be broken down if we're going to bring about true equality, according to Reverend Tendaic in her book, Learning to be White, which your minister has a copy of in her office. And I hope we are ready to enter phase 2 of overcoming injustice and assuring equity for all. It demands a cost, monetarily, emotionally, culturally, socially, and spiritually, to provide equality in education, employment, housing, access to health care. Issues of drug abuse treatment requires new way of looking at those broken and systems that are founded on racism. And to look at the ways in which the military and the legal and the prison complex system are a form of segregation and in need of overhaul are just some of the areas where work needs to be done, hence your collection this morning. And most importantly, there needs to be a commitment to strive together and build coalitions and relationships. I really want to commend you for your recent start of the Anti-Racism Committee. Are members of that committee here present today? Will you just raise your hand? Great. That's a large committee, and you're really committed, and may you thrive. May you thrive. And most of all, support one another as you explore ways to break apart the systemic racism that is part of our very being. You know, recently I heard somebody say, oh, what we need right now is some healing. We're not ready, unfortunately, for healing yet. But what we need is a leader to emerge who will say resisting and rioting and acting out of revenge isn't working, and arresting and restraining and resisting isn't working either. There has to be another way. And that way, I believe, is that you sit down and you dialogue and you build coalitions, you build relationships, and you do that through the long, hard times. And spiritual warriors, as Dr. King was. Could you be one? King was a spiritual warrior. He wasn't a warrior who was trained to kill to defeat the enemy. Spiritual warriors use love to defeat the enemy. They keep their minds and their hearts open to all. The Buddhist author Pema Chodron, in her book, The Places That Scare You, writes, spiritual warriors are willing to train in the middle of the fire. Training in the middle of the fire means to enter challenging situations in order to alleviate suffering and to have the dedication to uncover the basic distorted energy. Now, that energy that's needed is liberating love. It is compassion. It is the unreserved commitment of self to a greater cause. It is the gift of liberating love. King did this. Now, at first, he was reluctant, but once he found his spiritual footing, he could not be moved. His spiritual footing was his deep faith in a loving and caring God, as he called it, and in his understanding of the way that Jesus lived and gave his life for those who are oppressed and outcast. King's spiritual footing came through the Bible stories he retold. The stories that I invite you to think about as you enter into your anti-racism work. The stories about escaping from Egypt. The story from the parable of the Good Samaritan about care being extended to an outcast. And the story even of the prodigal son who returns home to his family as a changed man. Those religious groundings that King had and the spiritual gifts that he cultivated in himself and others made him be the spiritual warrior that he was. He did not think that civil rights was just about being nice to one another, nor that transformation should have stopped just because some improvement had occurred. And we are in that same place. We are at that precipice. We are at phase 2. We are stepping off into dangerous and difficult times. And like him, he was assassinated in his attempts. Let's hope by building ally relationships and coalitions that we will become the spiritual warriors, that we have support, strength, and courage with one another. Phase 2 really could bring about a transformation of society that would assure equity. Equity, not just equality, equity is equal access to everything, and everything has to be examined through that lens and of what are the historical blocks that block access. Now, a spiritual warrior does not seek to avoid uncertainty and fear, but rather seeks to know how to live with that discomfort. What did King do when his house was bombed? Did he give up? No, he didn't. He sat with Coretta. He didn't use violence. He didn't retaliate. He sat with his family and his friends. And even though she and he were upset and fearful, they made the decision to keep going. He moved forward even though he was full of fear, even though he had fear. The difference was that he and Coretta had fear. The fear did not have them. And that's one of the things that makes him a spiritual warrior. He was way ahead of his time in terms of vision and goals. He was brave enough, compassionate enough, wise enough to know that he was treading on very dangerous territory, or else he never would have been assassinated. He spoke out against poverty. He was naming class issues long before class warfare that even was thought about. And he spoke out about fair wages for the garbage workers, and he spoke out about creating and the ways that prison and the service were ways to control and destroy Black lives. To speak out against the use of violence, that's what he did. And those who went on to raise the banner of Black power, he spoke out against their use of violence. He spoke out against anyone who thought that violence was the answer, because he said, love, unconditional, all-abiding love is the answer. And if nothing else we can learn from him, from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we must learn to practice nonviolence in all our affairs, personal and social and cultural and institutional. So maybe let's think of ourselves as warriors in training. And it is helpful then to have teachers and friends and spiritual friends and other people to help us on our way. One year when I was on sabbatical, as Reverend Suzanne is now, I reread Dr. King's sermons, and I read a trilogy written by Taylor Branch. This is part one of it, from 54 to 63. There's three equally dense readings. But I read it because I wanted to explore my unconscious barriers so I could learn to stand with others, and I could practice endurance, and I could find ways for transformation, and that I could learn how to be a nonviolent presence. Because believe me, when injustice happens, it's pretty hard for me to not want to fight. And I had to learn, I really had to learn that if I wanted to be a good spiritual warrior, I had to learn nonviolent practices, because I had to internalize King's words that returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars, he said. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And I want to live that message from Martin Luther King Jr. I want to become a better spiritual warrior. I need you. I need us. I need people who are willing to work together, to cry together, to pray together, to struggle together, so that we can help usher in phase 2 and bring about change and transformation in this world that so desperately needs it. Are you willing to be a spiritual warrior? May it be so. We're going to end today with singing We Shall Overcome. This is a song that has become a rallying piece said at most marches. It was originally an old union organizing piece, and it's become a classic, a very classic activist marching piece. So I invite you to please rise and willing and able and join in We Shall Overcome. if you care to join together with me as we say the words to extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame. Our service today has ended. I would like you to sit and enjoy this postlude from Tom, and then I invite you, if you want to join together for a time visiting in the parish hall. If you'd like to stay for a chat and visit, please feel free to do so. Thank you all. Happy Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your day.